Het ek baie vroumense ontmoet wat in hierdie soort besigheid is. They are generating energy as women. I have also met a number of black investors here in the Western Cape, in Mpumalanga, as well as in KZN, who are deeply steeped in energy generation. The local traditional investors have also thrown their weight behind this opportunity we have opened, and so have foreign investors as well. From as far afield as China, from as far afield as the Middle East, the United States, Canada, India, Turkey, and Europe. A province such as the Northern Cape has now attracted no less than 100 biljoen van rande van investments. Miljard in renewable energy, and is seeing exponential economic growth in the province with the resultant creation of jobs. Second, we have accelerated the procurement of new generation capacity. 3 projects from the risk mitigation program have entered construction, with a further 5 projects expected to reach financial close during this quarter. Project agreements have been signed for 25 preferred bidders from bid window 5 and bid window 6, accounting to approximately 2,800 megawatts, of which 784 is already in construction. In the coming months, we will initiate the procurement of more than 10,000 megawatts of additional generation capacity from wind, solar, gas, and battery storage, which will further contribute to closing the shortfall in energy supply. Third, Madam Speaker, we have enabled municipalities to themselves procure power independently. Since we implemented this reform, a number of municipalities have embarked on the process to procure additional powers of as much as 1,500 megawatts. Fourth, we are driving progress on the unbundling of Eskom into separate entities for generation, transmission, and distribution, a process that a number of countries have also embarked upon to good effect in the past, and a number are also doing so as we speak. Significant progress has been made towards the establishment of the National Transmission Company of South Africa as an independent subsidiary of Eskom. I've asked the Minister of Public Enterprises to ensure that an independent board is appointed for the new transmission company by the end of June, so that it can be fully operational as soon as possible.
Order. I'm sorry, Honorable President. Honorable Members Kumbuzo. Honorable Members, will you please mute your mics? Honorable members on the virtual platform, will you please mute your mics? Thank you. You may proceed, Honorable President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At the same time, we are making progress in decisively addressing Eskom's debt burden. The 2029 budget introduced 254 billion in debt relief to Eskom, subject to conditions. This will relieve pressure on the utilities balance sheet, enabling it to conduct necessary maintenance and supporting the restructuring of the electricity market. Finally, we are pursuing sweeping legislative reform to end the energy crisis once and for all with the help of this House. We have already introduced the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill, which seeks to establish a competitive electricity market and support the unbundling of Eskom. This will fundamentally transform the electricity sector as we know it and as we have known it in the past, and will create a level playing field for multiple generators to participate in producing the energy that we need. A country like China has perfected this, where a number of generators compete with each other, and that has also brought prices of energy down. We will soon introduce another key piece of legislation, the Energy Security Bill, to streamline the regulatory framework and accelerate the construction of renewable energy projects. I call on members of this House from all political parties to pass this critical legislation in record time while adhering, of course, to parliamentary processes. We need to do so in months and not in years. At the moment of grave crisis, as I have said, we must pull together and place the interests of our people above all else. Despite this progress, however, the performance of Eskom's existing generation fleet continues to deteriorate as a result of its age and a legacy of poor maintenance and underinvestment, and yes, corruption as well. We face a difficult winter ahead as demand increases and several units at Medupi, Kusile, and Kubek power stations are currently under repair and remain offline. These 6 units alone, Minister Ramaphosa tells me, represent approximately 4,500 megawatts of capacity, or between 4 and 5 stages of load shedding. The situation will improve as we return these units to service towards the end of this year. Until then, our best hope of limiting the severity of load shedding is to reduce demand on the grid. As announced in the State of the Nation address, tax incentives have been introduced to support the rollout of rooftop solar for households. Just as we came together to stop the spread of COVID-19, we must all act now to bring down demand and over the winter months. We can all make a difference by switching off lights and appliances when not in use, reducing the temperatures of our geysers to 60 degrees, installing a geyser blanket or geyser timer to save energy and reduce your electricity bill, and to turn off unnecessary equipment like pool pumps and so on. By taking these simple actions and measures, we can reduce demand by up to 1,000 megawatts or 1 full stage of load shedding. We must reiterate that the risk of a national blackout remains extremely low. There are many safeguards in place to prevent such an eventuality from occurring. Load shedding allows Eskom to keep the system in balance at all times. The work that we are doing, Madam Speaker, to urgently resolve the current electricity shortfall does not diminish our commitment to a just energy transition. We will stick to our commitment to reduce our carbon emissions by 2030 to within a target range which, at its upper level, is compatible with limiting global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We need to do this to prevent the worst effects of climate change, including illness, droughts, floods, and other disasters. We also need to protect jobs in sectors of our economy that have to decarbonize to remain globally competitive. Where it may be necessary to delay the decommissioning of coal-fired power stations temporarily to address our electricity supply shortfall, any decision will be informed by a detailed technical assessment of the feasibility of continuing to operate older power stations and the cost of doing so relative to alternative energy sources. It will also be informed by the time frame in which we can expect new generation capacity and the impact of our decarbonization trajectory. At the same time, we will further accelerate the pace of investment in new renewable electricity generation as an important part of the plan to overcome load shedding. Viewed in totality, the Energy Action Plan must be seen as a springboard to a just energy transition, boosting the rollout of renewable energy sources, mobilizing significant investment, and creating new jobs in new sectors, from electric vehicles to solar installation to the hydrogen economy and many other subsectors. As we work to end the energy crisis, we are moving ahead with the economic reform agenda to revive economic growth and create jobs. Operation Vulindlela, the cooperation between Treasury and the Presidency, is working closely with the Department of Public Enterprises, the Department of Transport, and Transnet to finalize a roadmap for the freight logistics sector. This roadmap will shortly be completed and will outline the actions to improve the performance of our ports, which used to be high-performance ports in the past. It will also improve the performance of our rail, as well as measures to reform Transnet and create an efficient and competitive freight logistics system. To address the challenges in freight rail and port operations, we are forging cooperation at a very practical level with business, with unions, in the sectors such as logistics, agriculture, the auto industry, mining, and forestry. Now, Transnet is working to establish a separate infrastructure manager within Transnet Freight Rail, which will enable third-party access to the core rail network. In addition, partnerships with private terminal operators at the Durban and Ngqura terminal will help to improve the performance of our ports and also lead to the crowding in of the private sector to invest. At the 5th South African Investment Conference last month, I announced that we will be implementing far-reaching reforms to our visa system to attract skills, much-needed skills that we may not have, but more importantly, investments. 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Home Affairs published a detailed implementation plan to take forward the recommendations of the Work Visa Review. This plan outlines fundamental changes to our visa system. These include introducing a trusted employer scheme to provide a simplified process for qualifying companies and streamlining application requirements. We are establishing also a points-based system that will provide additional pathways for visa applicants based on their income and qualifications to introduce greater predictability flexibility, as well as transparency into the visa system. We are also creating new visa categories for remote workers as well as startups in business. Government has also rolled out the e-visa system to an additional 20 countries for tourist visas. In this financial year, we plan to introduce the e-visa system to other areas such as business, study, general work, intra-company transfer visas. Attracting more tourists, growing the tourism economy, and creating more jobs in the sector is vital to our economic recovery efforts. The most recent data from Stats SA and South African tourism show the sector is firmly on the road to recovery. Last year, nearly 5.7 million visitors came to our country, and in the first quarter of 2023, we received over 2 million visitors, more than double the amount in the same period last year. As we work to shorten the time it takes to issue tourist visas, we are also unblocking funding for transformation in the sector. We are addressing the delays in issuing tour operator licenses and training tourism monitors to improve tourist safety in various parts of the country. We are making progress on a number of other priority reforms, Madam Speaker, including putting in place a modern and fully transparent mining rights system, creating an enabling regulatory framework for hemp and cannabis, and clearing the backlog of title deeds for subsidized housing. Over time, these reforms will propel economic growth and enable companies to create sustainable new jobs. 5 years have now passed since we embarked on an ambitious investment drive to raise 1.2 trillion rand in new investment in our economy. As the 5th South African Investment Conference drew to a close on the 13th of April, we were able to announce that we had surpassed that target, having raised over 1.5 trillion rand in investment commitments. These commitments are steadily and surely translating into investments into the productive economy, establishing new enterprises, expanding existing ones, providing opportunities to suppliers along the value chain and creating employment, and in many cases, helping for the creation of Black emerging companies. These are significant achievements in the midst of great economic headwinds, not least of which was the disruption caused by COVID-19 and by the effects of the electricity crisis that we are going through right now. The mobilization of investment from both local and international companies has been accompanied by focused support on small business and cooperatives. For example, in the last financial year, nearly 75,000 small, medium enterprises and cooperatives received financial support through the Small Enterprise Finance Agency. These funding interventions created well over 32,000 jobs and sustained over 70,000 existing jobs. Changes have been made to the Bounce Back Loan Guarantee Scheme, which was introduced in 2022 to incentivize rooftop solar investments to reduce the effects of load shedding and small medium enterprises. The Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition recently announced the establishment of an energy resilient fund of 1.3 billion rand to help enterprises, including small medium enterprises, to mitigate the impact of load shedding. The recovery of our economy relies on a massive increase in investment. As we have reported before, we have been working to improve the capacity of government departments, various agencies, state-owned enterprises, and partners to prepare and implement infrastructure projects. This work is starting to see results. In its most recent work, the budget facility for infrastructure approved blended finance projects with a project value of 57 billion rand, and these are mainly for bulk water, port development, and housing projects. On the basis of a fiscal commitment of 21 billion rand, the Infrastructure Fund will engage with financial markets to enable investment in these projects by private sectors to ensure that these investments are indeed realized. Now, by gazetting a number of infrastructure projects, we are able to ensure that multiple authorizations, permit giving, and approvals are speeded up. And as a result, Madam Speaker, the total value of projects completed last year is some 21 billion rand. These include housing settlement projects like the Fochville Extension 2, Sondela, and Jeepistown Social Housing in Gauteng. Other completed projects include upgrades to the national roads, as well as a number of other small harbors. The value of projects currently in construction is over 300 billion rand, including energy, water, infrastructure, and rural roads projects. The development of a pipeline of green hydrogen projects with a value of over 300 billion rand is quite significant. Among these projects is the Bogobai Green Hydrogen in the Northern Cape, with the potential to create thousands of jobs. This will lay the basis for the development of a wholly new industry that will draw on South Africa's natural resources. And as you well know, we have the presidential employment stimulus, which remains a vital intervention by government to create work and livelihood opportunities, particularly at a time when the broader economy is not creating employment at the necessary pace. This builds on the achievements of over many years of public employment programs, EPWP, and community work programs. The stimulus created well over 600,000 job opportunities, and these opportunities created were in areas as diverse as basic education, small-scale farming, arts, and culture. This brings the total number of participants in this whole project to 1.2 million people. Implementing government's program of action rests on having a capable developmental state. To this end, our focus is on strengthening the capacity of the civil service to deliver on the mandate of serving the people of South Africa. We applaud the many public servants in our country who continue to serve the people of South Africa with diligence and commitment. And they do indeed deserve a round of applause from all of us. To root out malfeasance in the public service, we do plan to complete various processes, such as skills audit, lifestyle audits, particularly at the senior management level. As part of our response to recommendations of state capture, we have prioritized the establishment of a single register for disciplinary cases and processes across spheres of government. Cabinet recently approved for public comment a bill that would expand the powers of the Public Service Commission, including giving Commission authority over local government. This will go a long way to improving the professionalization and accountability of all spheres of our administration. From the advent of democracy, we have recognized that the challenge of poverty and hunger requires a broad range of interventions and programs that work together to address the various causes and manifestations of poverty. This informs the programs we have pursued in human settlements, in land reform, expansion of free basic services, provision of social grants, and improving access to education and healthcare. In addition to these programs, one of the most important recent interventions has been the special SRD grant, which provided support to unemployed South Africans to counter the effects of COVID-19. Building on that experience and looking beyond that grant, several government departments led by the Presidency are working to ensure that poor households do have access to a comprehensive set of interventions that create pathways out of poverty. This plan would harness the resources and capabilities of all government departments in an integrated and coordinated manner to enable productive livelihoods, maximize the impact of social security, as well as social services, ensure household food security, and enable sustainable human settlements and land reform. As announced in the State of the Nation address, re shebane le hore grant ena e batho ka bongata ba e bitsang 350 hore e ka iswa pele jwang le hona hore re ka e baakanya ka tsela efeng re shebile tsela tsohle hore e kgone ho thusa batho ba heso ha re ntse re tswella pele. During the course of this financial year, the Minister of Social Development will lead the development of an integrated database to enhance delivery of social protection and enable poverty alleviation programs to be integrated. The achievement of affordable universal health care is vital for improving human health, reducing inequality, and enabling South Africans to live more productive lives. A major milestone towards this goal has been achieved with the adoption of the National Health Insurance Bill by the Portfolio Committee on Health, which will soon be debated in this National Assembly. We commend the members and staff of the Portfolio Committee who have worked so hard to process the legislation, and all those organizations and individuals who made submissions, and all those people who participated in public hearings. There are still a number of sectors in our country who still want to put their views forward, and I'm sure that as the National Assembly engages with this bill, they will open their ears to some of those. As the NHI bill is finalized through the legislative process, and as it is implemented, we are determined to ensure that it both fulfills the goal of universal access to quality health care and builds on the significant capabilities of the public and private healthcare sectors. Progress is being made in preparation for the implementation of the NHI, including interventions to improve the quality of public and private healthcare and the rollout of the electronic patient registration system across public health facilities. Madam Speaker, the implementation of the NHI will be a momentous step forward, achieving universal health coverage and creating a society built on justice, fairness, and social solidarity, as it was envisaged in the Freedom Charter. Let us embrace this opportunity to create a healthier, more equitable future for all South Africans. We are indeed determined that the implementation of the NHI effectively tackles inequality in healthcare in a sustainable manner. It is a matter of concern that, according to the latest Progress in International Reading Literacy study, as many as 81% of grade 4 pupils cannot read for meaning in our country. Unless we grasp this challenge with the necessary urgency and application, this reality will undermine the prospects of South African children and stunt our nation's development. The Minister of Basic Education will therefore prioritize interventions to ensure that all 10-year-old learners can read for meaning. By the end of this financial year,
Order!
Madam Speaker, but by the end of this financial year, an integrated sector reading plan must be developed and implemented across all provinces. This includes the provision of a package of lesson plans and reading materials. And I will be spending more time in enhancing the President's Reading Circle program that I will invite a number of members of this House to join, because it does look like some of them need to join that, as I encourage all learners to be part of the reading drive. We are on course to eradicate unsafe toilets in public schools. Yes, we are on course. 5 years ago, around 3,400 schools did not have adequate sanitation facilities. Today, there are 750 schools that still need to be provided with safe and appropriate sanitation. These schools are scheduled for completion in this financial year. As part of the successful presidential employment stimulus, around 250,000 young people will be appointed and placed as school assistants by June 2023. Ministers across departments have been tasked to priorities and are meant to massify the training of young people in skills that are required to both implement government's programs and to make use of new opportunities in opening up our economy. For example, the Department of Transport will provide young people with skills-based training as train drivers, technicians, transport engineers, amongst others. The Department of Communications and Digital Technologies will establish partnerships to train young people in cell phone repairs, digital installation, and maintenance and aftercare. Ministers have been tasked to provide training to young people to enable them to make use of the surge in rooftop solar installation. The right to access to decent quality basic services is enshrined in our Constitution. When citizens are exposed to conditions that imperil their right to safe drinking water, it is the worst affront to human dignity. 2 weeks ago, there was an outbreak of cholera in Hammanskraal and in the Free State. Our thoughts and prayers are with those families who lost their loved ones, and we wish those who remain hospitalized a speedy recovery. Whilst an investigation is still underway into the source of the outbreak, we do know that cholera thrives in conditions where there is inadequate access to clean water and sanitation facilities. The people of Hammanskraal have had to put up with water supply challenges for quite a long time, and unfortunately, their plight is not an isolated one. 2 years ago, this administration reinstated the blue drop and green drop water quality monitoring systems to monitor the country's water quality. This will enable stronger intervention in municipalities that fail to meet the minimum norms. Last year's green drop reports points to serious challenges in our municipalities when it comes to managing water resources. That municipalities are underspending or not even utilizing critical grants to upgrade and maintain social infrastructure like water treatment facilities must be seen as being totally unacceptable. The Department of Water and Sanitation will continue its ongoing engagements with municipal managers, technical staff, mayors and councillors in districts to address this issue and provide support where it is necessary. The challenge in water provision highlights the broader challenge of dysfunctional municipalities in many areas. We need to strengthen local government by separating the administration from undue political influence. For example, the appointment process of officials such as municipal managers, as well as chief financial officers in municipalities, could and should involve competency verification by national departments like the Cooperative Governance and National Treasury as well. This would help to ensure people with the right skills and experience are appointed. Insecurity and acts of criminality and lawlessness deter investment, as we all know. Our focus is on improving the capacity of the police to prevent and investigate crime. In the State of the Nation address, we announced that we would embark on a massive recruitment and training process. In December last year, these new recruits graduated from various police academies. 10,000 trainees will be recruited annually for the next 2 financial years, bringing the total number in the current 3-year period to 30,000. Of these, close to 3,000 will be allocated to the SAPS detective services. With support from the private sector, we are overhauling the 10111 call centers to ensure that people are able to access help when they need it. Additional financial resources have been allocated to supply and support community policing for us with much needed equipment. There are a number of SAPS operations that are underway to deal with the proliferation of illegal firearms, to tackle illegal mining, and to clamp down on theft and vandalism of economic infrastructure. Much of these intelligence-driven operations are being coordinated through the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation. We will not allow criminal syndicates to operate in this country, and we are targeting those at the top to disrupt their networks. The newly established border management agency is in the process of recruiting additional border guards, and work is underway to establish one-stop border posts at the country's 6 busiest ports of entry. Reform of our intelligence services is gaining momentum with the recent approval by Cabinet of the General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill. This is a major step in implementing the recommendations of the high-level panel on States Security Agency, the expert panel, and also the State Capture Commission. The bill provides framework for restructuring of our intelligence services. Despite progress in the implementation of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, we remain a long way from achieving a society where this scourge is eradicated. South Africans refuse to remain silent in the face of violent crime against women and children. One of the pillars that we have in the plan is legislative reform. Another advance is the substantial reduction of DNA backlog. In support of DNA-driven investigations, the forensic science laboratories in Gqeberha and KwaZulu-Natal will be revamped and refurbished. And I'm told that the DNA backlog has finally also been eliminated, as the Minister of Police said. To strengthen the response of criminal justice, additional resources have been allocated to SAP's Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences units. To advance the economic empowerment of women, over 6,000 women entrepreneurs have been trained to participate in the public and procurement space. Over the last financial year, the IDC has provided massive loans. We are pursuing our struggle against gender-based violence at a continental level as well. In October last year, I submitted to Parliament a detailed plan for the implementation of state capture. As you all recall, the NPA's Investigation Directorate is taking the lead by processing cases that have been recommended, and they are being financially capacitated as well. To date, the ID is involved in investigating 10 major categories of complex corruption in government and state-owned enterprises. An integrated task force comprising the NPA and Hawks is prioritizing state capture cases and will continue to coordinate the response of law enforcement agencies. And the Asset Forfeiture Unit is also working around the clock, as is the Special Investigation Unit. A mechanism has been established with the Department of Planning and Evaluation to monitor and track the implementation of various SIU recommendations, because the recurrent complaint is that many of the recommendations are not being implemented. We see this as a critical tool that must be strengthened if we are to ensure that the SIU referrals are not disregarded. This is an issue I've raised sharply with the ministers in my engagements with them dealing with their performance targets. The National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council that was set up to advise government on society-wide fight against corruption has been very active. The Council has organized itself into work streams that include legislative reforms and transparency, monitoring and evaluation. And they have already come up with a number of really positive, forward-looking proposals, including on how we should give more and further protection to whistleblowers. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development is finalizing a review of the anti-corruption architecture for consultation. The department has committed to ensuring that reviews of the Protected Disclosures Act and witness protection are completed as well. Another milestone in the fight against corruption will be the tabling in Parliament of the Public Procurement Bill that is aimed at putting stronger safeguards in place to prevent corruption in public procurement. We have often said that our progress as a nation cannot be separated from the progress of our continent as a whole. We will continue to work with our counterparts elsewhere on the continent to ensure that the African Union has the necessary capacity to advance unity, development, and peace on the continent. To drive the growth, diversification, and development of African economies, we are working to ensure that the African Continental Free Trade Area is effectively implemented. Yet one of the greatest obstacles to the achievement of the AfCFTA is the ongoing conflict and instability in several parts of the continent. We are deeply concerned about the fighting that continues in the Sudan and the resultant loss of life. We support all efforts to urgently resolve this conflict before more lives are lost and more damage is done. We remain committed to ensure the implementation of the peace agreement in Ethiopia that was arrived at here in South Africa, and where our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation also played a key role. And we will contribute to regional and continental efforts towards peace and stability, as we are in northern Mozambique, Eswatini, the eastern DRC, in South Sudan, and the completion of the various peace efforts and reform efforts in Lesotho. We are seeking to use our missions abroad more effectively to drive trade and investment. The Department of International Relations is working with other departments to ensure that our missions will seek out foreign direct investment opportunities, promote tourism, and identify markets for us. Later this year, South Africa will be hosting the BRICS Summit. This is an important platform through which to advance our developmental objectives as a country and indeed as a continent. We have forged strong political, social, and economic ties with our fellow BRICS countries, which this summit will consolidate and build on. And as many of you will know, BRICS has acquired a very important stature in the world, with many countries across various continents of our world seeking to be part of it. We share common perspectives on the importance of multilateralism, a rules-based world order, and inclusive development. As part of our strategic intent to further advance the African development agenda within BRICS Group, we are inviting several other African leaders to the summit. One of the priorities during our chairship of BRICS is to build a partnership between BRICS and Africa to unlock mutually beneficial opportunities for increased trade, investment, and infrastructure development. And South Africa continues to benefit from its participation in BRICS beyond trade and investment ties. For example, the new development bank, which was established by BRICS countries in 2015, has to date approved 11 projects in South Africa valued at around 100 billion rand in various sectors: road improvement, ports, water, and energy. Our foreign policy stance, Madam Speaker, is informed by the understanding that multilateralism and respect for international law are key to global political and economic stability. We continue to work for the deepening and strengthening of progressive multilateralism and reform of multilateral institutions. That the UN Security Council excludes Africa in its participation is something that is totally unacceptable to us. There have been concerted efforts to draw South Africa into the broader geopolitical context around Russia and Ukraine conflict. Yet we have consistently maintained our non-allied stance, our respect for the UN Charter and the peaceful resolution through dialogue. Our understanding of non-alignment, which is distinct from the concept of neutrality, is rooted in the Bandung principles, which continue to guide the non-aligned movement. From the beginning of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, our position has been that this conflict needs to be resolved
Order, honorable members.
through negotiation.
Order. Please do not drown the speaker, please.
Madam Speaker, South Africa, in pursuance of this stance which we articulated right from the beginning, when this conflict commenced, we did say, and we say it unambiguously even now, that conflicts of this nature need to be resolved in the way that we were taught by the father of our nation, Nelson Mandela. South Africa is pleased to participate in a mission by 6 African countries to seek a peaceful resolution to the conflict. We will soon be traveling to Kyiv in Ukraine, as well as traveling to Moscow in Russia to engage with the heads of states of these 2 countries to sue for peace and make sure South Africa seeks to maintain good relations with all countries across the globe. As we work to strengthen ties of trade and investment, we also seek to build support for a more inclusive, representative, and equitable world order. We will continue to maintain an independent foreign policy and will use our presence in international forums to promote dialogue and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Where concerns are raised about our commitment to our position, we have addressed them, and we have addressed them directly and openly. In this regard, I will be sending, once again, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, the Minister of Trade and Competition, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister in the Presidency as my envoys to the G7 countries to explain our peace mission and to deal with various diplomatic matters. Our engagements thus far with a number of G7 countries, including our African sister countries, on these matters have already drawn a lot of understanding and support. With a view to dealing with various matters that have to do with our international relations, I have recently appointed an independent panel headed by Justice Mojapelo to inquire into the circumstances of the docking of a Russian vessel in Simonstown last year. The panel is expected to complete its work within 6 weeks and to submit its report to me within 2 weeks of concluding its work. Madam Speaker, there is no denying the severe challenges that our country faces, nor the determination of all South Africans to overcome the difficulties of the moment. The road ahead will indeed be demanding. It is therefore vital that we work together, that we harness our collective resources, we harness our collective energy and wisdom to overcome the difficulties of the moment. We have achieved outstanding feats of human development since the advent of democracy, but there is much more that needs to be done. Let us continue working together to overcome these challenges of the present and build the better future that we seek, and so that all our people can lead a better life. Ni helela kwala, di feza henefa, di aribu.
I thank you. I thank you, Honorable the President. Order. I now invite the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Ha ke lebohe mme modula situlo ke dumedise ho mopresidenta, Deputy President, all honorable members of this august house, batswadi le baemi ba South Africa kaofela nita sungula kwalana. The African National Congress enters this debate filled with confidence that we are making progress and we are supported by a presidency that displays visible leadership, vision, and a deep sense of pragmatism in dealing with the challenges we face. We don't have a president who goes underground when the country is experiencing challenges. We have a president who is always visible amongst the people of South Africa. Owethu umongameli akeva ngobaliselwa, abanamehlo bayabona, abanendlebe bayeva, amanqina asingqongile ayaziyo into yoba lo rhulumente wenza ntoni na. Our confidence is informed by the evidence-based research, facts, and statistics. Kwinkalo zonke zophuhliso, Honorable Chirwa, through you, Honorable Speaker, abantu boMzantsi Afrika bayamazi urhulumente wabo, bambonile urhulumente ongoyikiyo ukuthi ingxaki zikhona. Siyavuma into yoba ukusuka ngo-94 silithathile ilizwe salibeka endaweni ephakamileyo, kodwa liyakhula ilizwe nabantu balo. Iimfuno zelizwe uqoqosho lungakhuliyo ludala uxinzelelo kurhulumente. Ukuba ngaba awuhlala eMzantsi Afrika awungeshitibi mitabulabula leshi nalashiya. We are approaching 30 years of constitutional democracy, a democracy that was forged out of a bloody struggle and great sacrifice, and which has shaped our constitution and our Bill of Rights. As a nation, we should not be led, umamele, we should not be led by fallacies and falsehoods which are generated by fake news and spurious allegations that there is a failed state in South Africa. There is no failed state in South Africa. A failed state is where there are no three arms of state being independent. A failed state is a state that cannot even convene elections to sit in accordance with the constitution. A failed state is a state where parliament cannot sit, where municipalities cannot sit. Therefore,
Order, honorable members, please.
For
Please don't do that.
state, it means you are not living on this planet Earth. You are living in your own imagination of something else that we don't know. Sihlala apha eMzantsi Afrika. Ukhona urhulumente yilonto nizawuma kule ndawo nintyiloze nisithi urhulumente akenzanga le naleya ngoba niyamazi ukhona. Awungengxoli ngento engekhoyo kwaye ezawukhonkotha yilihambayo. Our nation, those who are opposed to our democratic state, have longed for our nation to fail and engrave this continent, Africa, as a continent that has failed. It was 6 days ago when
But order, honestly, Honorable Chief Whip, just. Kodwa ke Honorable Stebe, Schreiber, I'm sorry. There's the Honorable Schreiber. Honestly, you've been having a running commentary throughout. It's not right, please. Just lower your volume. Thank you. Proceed, Honorable Member.
Inkosi kakhulu somlomo. Insuku ezintandathu ezidlulileyo, this beautiful Parliament of South Africa joined the entire continent in celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity, now the AU. The principles, the founding principles of African Union are not yet realized in the entire continent. Hence, this government of South Africa go out and play its role on solidarity, because our liberation was informed of solidarity. By solidarity, we were supported when some of you were playing with cats and dogs. Lo khulumente ukhokhelwe ngumongameli ngoba ubuzisile ubomi obungcono ebantwini. Kumele mongameli into yoba abantu bakhale ngombani ongekhoyo. Bamele kuba kaloku abantu bakowethu zange babe nambani ubomi babo bonke until 1994 kungene lo rhulumente awufake ezilalini. Thina sixhamla umbani oze nalo rhulumente. Ke ngoku asizukwazi ukuthi sesifakwe kubomi obungcono siphinde sibuyele umva. Bamela abantu kwenza isankxwe mongameli kwaye nathi sihamba nabo kweso sankxwe. Yiloo nto sibulela xa unomphathiswa ojongane ngqo nalo cimicimi khona ukuze ubomi babantu bakowethu bubuyele endaweni bobukuyo. Sinomongameli apha okhokhela elilizwe. We have placed the president and the presidency as the custodians of the development of our national democratic society, advancing and affirming policy through overseeing implementation of the medium-term strategic framework and as well as cabinet. Abantu ke abafike bazongcola apha balindele into yoba urhulumente we-African National Congress implemente imanifesto zabo esingazaziyo. Sihamba ngomgca ngezize ngale yethu imanifesto. Abantu bakowethu basinika imandate beva imanifesto sihamba ngayo ke nizawuma apha nizowufuna uhanana nohenene ngoba asizukwenza le yenu. Imbutho zabagxeki ke ingxaki yazo zicinga into yoba ukugxeka kufuneka umhlanazolo ungayiboni into enhle. Through a people-centered approach, not that, the president has visited various districts, holding izimbizo, listening to our people and intervening on behalf of our people. Niyazibona ezo zinto cha xa nilapha niyazimfanekisa ngathi zange nizibone. The president has led from the front, wasindisa abanye abantu abaninzi boMzantsi Afrika ngexesha sifikelwe ligongqongqo le-COVID-19. Sibone engenelela umongameli hudikodiwo tse etsahetseng ka hara setjhaba moo batho le matlo le infrastructure inkilwe ke metsi ka pula tse kgolo ngoba climate change inyani iyenzeka kwaye i-social mobilization iyafuneka into yokuba sidibane. Kukho izinto ezingafuni into yoba kube kuphikiswa, kukho izinto ekufanele uba sihambe kunye sithi zi-affect ilizwe lonke nathi sonke masihambeni kunye ke. Let us look at the track record. Nje ndinithi nje qapha ndinishiye ku-expiration yakho mandithi ke on employment and labor, the president has advanced workers' rights through amendments of a labor legislation protecting the most vulnerable workers, revised legislation for injury on duty and health and safety. Aniziqondi ngoba nizijonge nozijonge ezo zinto ezizinhle zithathu i-country ziyise phambili. On human settlements, abantu bafumene uzinziso lwabo saphuma kwi-department yezindlu saya kuzinziso loluntu khona ukuze abantu babe namakhaya. Sabona kuguqulwa informal settlement zisenziwa izindlu ezamkelekileyo zokuhlalisa abantu. Kubalulekile ke into yoba lento inedibene nezindlu ayizukhawuleza iphele kuba abantu basuka kwindawo ngendawo basondele kwindawo ezinedolophu kuba bejonga amahliwa alihlaza. Ayithi ke loo nto kwenziwa nto, but this is a moving target that you have to chase on daily basis. Siyayazi intswela misebenzi, rate of unemployment, yilaa nto khona le presidential stimulus pack yokuncedisa kanye xa kungenele lapho. Kumelekile into yoba ndike ndigqithe kulo mcimbi we-13 kaDisemba sawuvala la mcimbi, asinamcimbi etafuleni. I-13 kaDisemba yafika yogqitha savota sathi le report ithetha ngephalaphala ayivakali nkwatshu. Kufuneka ke ngoko ngexesha elilungileyo xa kunawubuya mamela xa kunawubuya i-report engenye sizawuhamba siphinde sijo masithini ukuya phambili. So asunungxama. Okay. Lo hanana kai mafatsing into yoba i-business iluze i-confidence kumongameli ayonyani. Umongameli ubiza i-investment conference kuyona business akuyinina. Aninawuya nina phani ngoba no business. Kuyona business pha bafike bancedisa umongameli ukwakhilizwe bebheka phambili. umcimbi wokuphelelwa lithemba ebantwini. Umcimbi wokuphelelwa lithemba ebantwini ngenxa ye-gender based violence. Sithi ke nawona lowo ababantu bahlukunyezwa ukusuka
Honorable
emakhaya.
Chief Whip, your time is now expired.
Thank you very much.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. The next speaker is the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this House back, if I may, to 2019. And looking back from the winter of 2023, it can be difficult to recall what things were like back then. But if we are to chart a course away from the dangerous trajectory that our country is on, then it is essential that we establish just how we got here. So let's go back to some excerpts from President Ramaphosa's first inaugural speech, delivered almost 4 years ago to the day. And I quote, "Let us declare our shared determination that we shall end poverty in South Africa within a generation, that there should be no child that goes hungry. Every school child will be able to read, and every person who wants to work will have a reasonable opportunity to find employment. Let us build a truly non-racial society, one that belongs to all South Africans and in which all South Africans belong." It is to this brighter day that we now turn our eyes, to a vista rich with the hues of hope and promise. A new era has dawned in our country, unquote. Now, this was soaring rhetoric, to be sure, but instead of inspiring hope as they once did, hearing these words today leaves one with an altogether different set of emotions. Despair, anger, betrayal. We now know that the New Dawn was a deceitful campaign designed to present Cyril Ramaphosa as the one thing he never was and never could be, a leader. And to be fair, the campaign worked like a charm. Millions of South Africans put their faith in Mr. Ramaphosa. The respected international magazine, The Economist, even proclaimed that, and I quote, "To stop the rot in South Africa, back Cyril Ramaphosa," unquote. But 4 years later, the president has broken every single one of the promises he made in his inaugural speech. And in fact, if we're honest, he lately barely seems interested in the job. And the meandering hour and 15 today just proves that. He's like somebody who's quiet quit a long time ago. Now, given the regurgitation of the same promises again today, let us remind ourselves of what was promised and what he did. He promised to end poverty. What he has done and what he did is increased it dramatically. He promised clean and accountable government. What he did was stuff dollars into a couch at Phala Phala. He promised that no child would go hungry. And what he did was to ban food distribution at schools during the COVID pandemic. What he did was cause child hunger to skyrocket by 50%. 1 in 3 children today goes to bed hungry. What he did was plunge South Africa into stage 6 load shedding, because corrupt cadres have to eat, after all, while the people starve. What he did caused our currency to lose over 40% of its value since he became president. He promised that every child will be able to read. And what he's done is increased illiteracy to a point where 81% of grade 4 children cannot read for meaning. What he did was spend millions of rands fumigating cockroaches in ministerial homes while our young children die in pit latrines every single day. He promised that everybody who wanted to work could get the reasonable chance of a job. What he did was increase unemployment from 10 million to 12 million. He promised, as he's done again today, to tackle gender-based violence and crime. What he did is he increased the rate of murder from 57 to 76 every day, and the number of women raped in our country from 114 to 120 every single day. He promised a united, non-racial society. What he did was introduce race quotas that will cause 600,000 people to lose their jobs based only on their skin color, and which will ban entire groups from areas and provinces in our country. Speaker, Chairperson, after 4 years of deceit, it's now time for some hard truth. And that truth is that life in South Africa today is far worse for everyone than it was at the height of the Zuma years. The truth, Mr. President, is that you fooled the people of South Africa into believing that you could take our country to better days. But you are no leader, and you have shown no leadership. What you are is a confidence trickster. A confidence trickster who milked your connections to become a billionaire and then left South Africa down and in the dirt, bleeding once you were done with us. But the jig is up, Mr. President. The business people who once sang your praises can't walk away from you fast enough. The Reserve Bank that breathed a sigh of relief upon your election is now warning that your love affair with a warmonger could soon result in sanctions. Your legal advisors have told you not to challenge the Pala Pala report in the High Court ruling because they know you will lose. And on top of all of that, the EFF is busy executing a reverse takeover of your party at a municipal level. Now, we all know that today and tomorrow, you will return to the podium with red herrings like grandstanding and point scoring. But the cold, hard truth is that in the end, Mr. Ramaphosa is just another ANC cadre who's betrayed our country. There's no more space or time for us to delude ourselves into believing that some cadre in shining armor is going to come and save the country. South Africa is in a disaster today because we got carried away by empty promises. And if we're honest with each other, there never really was any concrete evidence that Mr. Ramaphosa could deliver any of the things that he promised. He made us believe because we wanted to believe. And then he mercilessly dashed our hopes. And what we need to do now is to look to hard evidence of delivery, not more of the bland and broad promises that we heard today. And we need to look at this as we choose how we go into the election next year. We need to choose deeds of delivery over worthless words. And that is precisely what my party, the Democratic Alliance, is offering the people of South Africa. And you don't have to believe our promises. You just have to believe your own eyes. Where the DA governs, we are actually lifting people out of poverty. The DA-run Western Cape has the lowest unemployment and the lowest poverty rate in the entire country. Where the DA governs, food distribution to
Order,
hungry
honourable
children,
members. Order.
where the DA governs, food distribution for hungry children continued throughout lockdown, despite this government's best efforts to stop it. It's a DA that's fighting to address the cost of living crisis by calling for the cutting of fuel levies and an expansion of the basket of VAT-free basic foodstuffs. DA-run Cape Town is the first city to start meaningfully cutting load shedding. And in fact, Cape Town's infrastructure budget is now bigger than eThekwini and Johannesburg's infrastructure budget combined, with 73% of that going to be targeted at poorest residents. In the DA-run Western Cape, double as many children can read for meaning compared to the rest of the country. And we have already invested 1.2 billion rand in reversing learning losses from COVID. But you don't have to believe me. In the previous quarter, your own government's job statistics showed that 98% of all net new jobs were created in the DA-run Western Cape. The provinces run by your party accounted for just 2%. Ratings Africa confirmed that of the all top 5 municipalities in the country, including the best-run metro, are all DA-run municipalities. And just yesterday, we received the spectacular news that the DA-run Western Cape has reduced the murder rate by an unprecedented 14%, with sexual offences down 2%. Our investment is paying off. And none of these things came about by accident. In that same 2019 article endorsing Mr. Ramaphosa, The Economist had also this to say, and I quote, "The DA has the right ideas for fixing South Africa, but it is in no position to implement them," unquote. It said that because the DA then had no clear path to victory. It was better to cross our fingers and hope that Mr. Ramaphosa would fix the ANC. But this is no longer the case, because as we head into this next election, the DA, together with our partners and other parties, can indeed offer South Africans a clear pathway to victory. The parties that are already in talks account for over 35% of the votes in the last election. By working together, we can grow that extra 15 percentage points to take power nationally. In addition, a solid DA majority in the Western Cape, the packed parties are polling at 43% in the Northern Cape and 48% in Gauteng. Unlike in 2019, voters no longer need to be deceived by Mr. Ramaphosa's small talk or just hope for the best. And so to the voters who were deceived by Mr. Ramaphosa in 2019, I say, don't let him fool you twice. To the 14 million registered voters who stopped voting, it's time to take your country's future in your hands. To the 13 million more people who are not even registered to vote, I say you matter. Your voice must be heard, and your vote can save the country we love. As for Mr. Ramaphosa, to you, sir, I say, you have a great future behind you. We all know that you quit on us a long time ago. But next year, by standing together, united around values and principles, we can get a new government in place, a packed government that refuses to quit on South Africa and her people. I thank you.
Order, honourable members. Order. The next speaker is the Honourable Shavambu.
No, thank you very much, Chair of Chairs. National Chair of the EFF, I was saying to you now that I find it very difficult to find anything coherent said by the Chief Whip of the majority party. I guess it's largely a reflection of a generation of the Congress Youth League, which majority of them are not clear in terms of articulating anything. So let's then deal with certain issues. And maybe so that because children watch this parliament, let's deal with the conceptual issues quickly. about the Organization of African Unity and the African Union. So despite the fact that we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of the OAU, its founding principles were problematic because it was about cooperation instead of integration of the African continent. Against the advice of Ahmed Ben Bella, against the advice of Kwame Nkrumah, against the advice of Sokoto, against the advice of Emperor Haile Selassie. And we are still suffering as the African continent because we did not pursue the integration route. We took the cooperation route in terms of how we get to collectively develop the African economy. I think that settles this issue of whether there is common founding principles of the OAU and the African Union. We still should purposefully pursue integration of the entire African continent with one army, one currency, one central bank, and a common infrastructure that is going to interconnect the entire continent. That is what we should deal with. I just thought that maybe from an instructive point of view, we should educate the former treasurer of the Congress Youth League. Then the issue that we want to take this opportunity to once again send our best wishes to the councillors of the EFF who have been now joining government in the metropolitan municipalities of Johannesburg, of eThekwini, of Nelson Mandela Bay, of Ekurhuleni, the city of Ekurhuleni, and of course, those that have just been confirmed in the district municipalities of Mogale City and the Western District, that since their occupation of office, they've thus far demonstrated that we were correct when we said 10 years ago that we are a government in waiting. We're government now. We're in charge of your lives in many parts. Majority of you stay in cities which are governed and overseen by the economic freedom fighters. We have successfully reduced the former liberation movement into a rural party when we're in control of strategic sectors of the economy in terms of what happens. And that is what we do, excel in that. We reduce you first into a rural party, and next day we're going to completely take you out when we defeat you in the upcoming elections. We're encouraged by the young people in universities and universities of technology.
Honorable
From the
Shavambu,
Durban University of Technology.
Honorable Shavambu, may I
Yes,
just
Chair.
appeal to the members in the House that while interjections are allowed, not ongoing commentary is allowed. So please just observe the rule, please. Please proceed.
Chair, please don't protect me, I'm fine.
Simply
Let them
applying
out,
the
let them out,
rules.
they can speak, all of them.
I'm applying the
Because
rules,
they are-
honorable
yeah.
member. Please proceed.
Please don't.
Order,
I'm
honorable members. Order,
still
order.
in perspective in terms of what we're dealing with. I don't need the protection for now. We'll let you know if we do need the protection. We're encouraged by young people from universities and universities of technology. We're already operating on the clarion call that 2024 will be our 1994. So young people in all the universities, in different communities, in Kwao, in Ward 11, in Komazi, in Fatengten, so where the Commander-in-Chief is speaking today, in Ward 17 in Ditlabing, the young people there, a generation is saying that 2024 is going to be our 1994. We're going to liberate our people far much more emphatically. Not the clownish things that have been happening since 1994. Now, we have, as the EFF, not been participating in an activity where the sole director of Ntabanyoni Estate, which owns Palapala Farm, appears in, because of the report which this parliament rejected. That report, the independent panel report, said that there is prima facie evidence that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa may have committed a serious violation of Section 96(2)(a) of the Constitution, a serious violation of Section 34(1) of the Prevention of Corruption Act, that he might have committed a serious misconduct in that he violated possibly Section 96(2)(b) of the Constitution by acting in a way that is inconsistent with his office. A serious misconduct in that the President violated Section 96(2)(b) of the Constitution by exposing himself to a situation involving conflict between the official responsibilities and his private business. That report, which is not challenged anywhere, there is no counter perspective about that report. There is not even an intention to invalidate it. It says that as the panel, they view that there was a deliberate purpose to not report the crime and to establish as to just what happened in Palapala. And that there was a deliberate intention not to investigate the commission of those crimes. And that the request of the Namibian police to handle the matter with discretion confirms this intention. That the President abused his position as head of state to have the matter investigated and seeking the assistance of the Namibian President to apprehend a suspect. And that report, which is not disputed by anyone, says that there was more foreign currency concealed in the sofa, more than the amount reflected in the acknowledgement of receipt. Speaker, we have written to you already that let us get a proper inquiry. Let us deal with this, let's confront it. We can't hide it under the sofa forever. Let us deal with it. Also, you're not going to be in office forever. It will be, just confront your sins and demons now. So that we deal, this issue of Palapala is not going to disappear. We are still here. So we must have to then deal with all of these issues in a much more comprehensive and clear way. Your interventions thus far, despite you like applauding each other and patronizing each other about electricity, you still have not come with a believable and clear plan, all of you, in terms of what should happen. When we debated SONA, we said that the immediate solution, which you rejected then, was to plug in the floating storage regasification units and the power stations that, of course, are powered by that. And we then said that the delays in plugging in the floating power stations is because there's no conclusion on the negotiations for bribes. I hear now that you are going to plug that because the person who owns Tshwane House has got now exposure to the car power ship deal that is going to bring the 1,250 megawatts into South Africa. And we know who that is. In the beginning of this year, we as the leadership of the EFF went to Mozambique to meet with Electricidade de Mozambique, which is the equivalent of ESCOM in Mozambique, to engage about the surplus energy which Mozambique has. We see that now recently the minister went there after we had engaged in enhanced discussions because already we're going to utilize the power purchasing agreement power which we have as the members of the mayoral committee in the city of Ekurhuleni and now recently in the Nelson Mandela Bay. We're going to utilize that purchasing power to bring in the surplus electricity from Mozambique, but also invest in other strategic sectors of what should happen. And without just theorizing, we met with Rosatom from the Russian Federation to talk about the nuclear option because as part of the long-term interventions, we need to commission not less than 6,000 megawatts of nuclear energy which must be plugged into the grid because ourselves we speak long-term because we know that even in 30 years' time, we're going to be in charge of this country. And we want an industrialized economy that has got full electricity in terms of what happens. We have been in engagement with all the strategic role players, including the people who are exposed to ESCOM. So the solutions, Minister Sputla, the dancing minister, our solutions extend to even the technical and mechanical capacity to resolve what are the current crises in ESCOM, in all the units and all the power stations. We do not, of course, have political power currently. But if we were to take political power tomorrow, we will take sound and proper political decisions that are going to restore energy and electricity in South Africa. Because we are not under an illusion, none whatsoever, that you can solve South Africa's problems when you are diverting from coal. Coal is the only dependable source currently of energy, of course, with nuclear. Solar PVs are not an on-grid solution. You must get that into your head. They don't teach that in civil engineering, which you are aware of. But solar and wind, there's not a single renewable energy source in South Africa which has got an energy availability factor above 30%. Not a single all these grids, all these bid windows that you have been signing of solar, they are not giving electricity. You are just distributing money of ESCOM to them. We have to purposefully revive all the units, the more than 50,000 megawatts that are going to be coming from ESCOM must be revived into full operation. Then we'll have electricity. Not these games that you are doing of talking English every day when there's no clear perspective of what is going to happen. We are the only party that is going to restore stability in this country. Everything else that is happening under this administration points to the negative. The levels of unemployment is the highest. For the first time in South Africa, the labor force, more than 50% of the labor force of people who are capable of working are not working. So they fall in the categories of unemployed, unemployable, discouraged work seekers, but also those who are not in education and training. So of the 30 or 30.1 million people in that labor force component, you have got more than 16 million that are not doing anything. But and you still have people who come and applaud a president. No, president, everything else is fine. And you have got a chief whip who just talks as if there's nothing wrong. And you guys give her the highest applause for praising absolute rubbish. What nonsense is this? What are we dealing with here? What are we dealing with? What are we dealing with in this counter? There are so many things like, how do you have more than 6,000 people killed in 3 months? We are competing with the conflict in the necessary intervention in the Ukraine and Russia situation because of the murder cases without a clear plan that is coming from this government. I was supposed to leave 6 minutes for you, National Chair. Now it's 2.3 minutes. Please come and respond to them because I know some of them are going to go via off. Thank you very much.
Order, honorable members. Order. The next speaker is the Deputy President of the Republic. The Deputy President. Order, honorable members. Order.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Honorable Speaker, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members of the National Assembly, I would like to reflect briefly on the social and political context in which we are delivering this budget vote today. Honorable House Chair, this year marks the formation of the Union of South Africa 113 years ago, exactly on this day. It also marks 110th anniversary of the 1913 Land Act, which displaced our people from their land and excluded them from the economy. Honorable House Chair, we are on the cusp of 30 years of freedom and democracy, and nearly 3 decades since the adoption of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. During this period, we have demonstrated our commitment to the principles of the Constitution by, amongst others, ensuring that we hold free and fair elections, adhering to the rule of law, building credible and innovative democratic institutions, and a concerted effort to change the lives of our people for the better. As we reflect on these milestones, we should acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead to better eradicate and rededicate ourselves to the ideals of the South Africa we have envisaged in the Constitution. Similarly, House Chair, we acknowledge the role of heroes and heroines who contributed to our struggle for freedom, and millions of ordinary men and women who continue to work tirelessly to realize the South Africa of our dreams. In particular, we recall the role of the 3 important generations, starting with the 1976 student uprising generation, which went to play a critical role in rendering the apartheid system ungovernable. This generation inspired the formation of the Congress of South African Students, COSAS, whose 44th anniversary we are celebrating today. COSAS would go on to play an integral role in the United Democratic Front, which was founded 40 years ago in Mitchell's Plain here in Cape Town. House Chair, the endurance of these generations in the face of injustice laid the foundations for a democratic South Africa. Honorable House Chair, despite the entrenched colonial and apartheid system, we have made significant gains as a nation. In this regard, I would like to report on the following areas of government responsibility: governance, state capacity and institutional development, justice, crime prevention, and security. Furthermore, to look at government business in Parliament. We will also outline a roadmap of elevated priorities for the remainder of the term of the 6th administration. Specifically, in the next 6 to 12 months, we are going to implement rapid response interventions on service delivery and troubleshooting in service delivery hotspots. As the President indicated in his address, we are here to outline what we have done in realizing our mandate as given by our people in 2019 to grow South Africa together in line with our long-standing commitment to building a better life for all. Working with all spheres of government, we are continuing to strengthen the rollout of the District Development Model, DDM, through effective coordination of the different spheres of government, which will improve the functioning of municipalities and address community concerns. House Chair, we have been engaging with critical stakeholders to improve coordination and mobilization in support of service delivery measures in municipalities and districts. This includes consultation with traditional leaders on the implementation of government programs aimed at accelerating service delivery. We are also strengthening partnerships with business, labor, and government to source critical skills required by the economy and the state through what we call the Human Resource Development Council. We had a meeting recently, House Chair, in KZN of the Human Resource Development Council. House Chair, the work done over the medium-term expenditure framework period will contribute towards the 30-year review report of democratic governance, which will be released in 2024. Our country has registered progress in areas of electricity delivery, healthcare, infrastructure development, cushioning the indigents, the provision of basic water, housing, and improvement in literacy. More than 85% of South Africans have their homes electrified. Over 5.7 million people are on treatment for HIV. 2 trillion rands has been invested in national infrastructure projects over 10 years. Over 18 million South Africans benefit from social grants. 90% of South Africans have access to clean, drinkable water. Over 14 million people have benefited from the 3.2 million free houses that were built since 1994. Also, House Chair, 95% of South Africans can read and write. I think we should emphasize that. We are aware of and working tirelessly to solve problems of electricity generation, water provision, and infrastructure, amongst others. And I'm sure Minister Ramaphosa will talk about this later on electricity. House Chair, we will equally be engaging various sectors of society on their lived experiences and provide reflections on government's performance over the last 30 years. The government accepts criticism because, as a nation, we have divergent views and believe in the principle that everyone must be heard so that we can forge ahead with our task of nation building of a better South Africa as envisaged in our Constitution. Honorable House Chair, the State of Local Government Report of 2023 has presented a challenging picture with regard to service delivery across the country. Overall, municipalities suffer from, amongst others, the following: poor capacity of existing infrastructure to meet current needs and future needs of the community, neglect of maintenance and or poor operational management of existing infrastructure, lack of internal capacity in the form of technical and managerial skills, weak work processes and governance processes for planning, delivery, operating and maintaining infrastructure, insufficient funding, as well as poor management practices that are rendered by municipalities.
Honorable Deputy President, may I just remind the NA table and ICT that they must neutralize those members who switch on their microphones. It doesn't assist us in this debate. Honorable Deputy President, it seems to me the honorable member is persistent.
Yeah,
Please continue, Honorable Deputy President.
I'll be happy if they can be neutralized. Honorable House Chair, I was saying that insufficient funding as well as poor financial management practices does render municipalities unsustainable. But House Chair, we have not only acknowledged these challenges in local government. Central to the responsibilities of the Deputy President, as delegated by the President, is to enforce one plan integration across government through the district development model. It is the whole of government approach. It is the maximization of resources through the district development model and the service delivery response, rapid response approach. We have been working to ensure that we have one plan that is measurable, implementable, and citizen-focused. So in short, House Chair, I'm saying, kuyasetshenzwa. House Chair, over the last 2 months, I visited Gauteng, Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Eastern Cape to help resolve service delivery problems. In all the 6 districts and metros where we undertook oversight visits, we received reports on how government is working together to address service delivery challenges and progress made in the adoption of one plans. We are pleased that good work is being done. However, there is a need to strengthen partnership to improve service delivery. So we have decided, House Chair, that we'll continue to monitor progress, but we will be returning to all those provinces. We are committed to building a stable democracy that works for all people. That is why, in response to unstable coalition governments, especially in municipalities, we have proposed to convene dialogue on the coalition governments. The intention is to reach consensus on the principles of coalition governments and to ensure that we continue to build strong, stable democracy for our country. As we said before, engaging the development of a coherent framework for coalition government is part of nation-building project. This will lay the basis for legislation that will pass later this year. Honorable House Chair, our work through the South African National AIDS Council, SANAC, is bearing fruit. Together as government, civil society, private sector, labor and development partners, we are on track in mitigating the impact of dual epidemics of HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis. The implementation of the National Strategic Plan for HIV, tuberculosis, and sexually transmitted infection 2017 to 2022 has had a positive impact on combating HIV and AIDS in the last 5 years. House Chair, a special focus has now been given to accelerating prevention to reduce new infections of HIV, TB, and sexually transmitted infections, providing treatment to reduce illness and mortality, as well as reaching all key and vulnerable populations with interventions and leaving no one behind. It is for this reason that SANAC has been holding a series of engagements with civil society, interfaith leaders, traditional healthcare practitioners, and the private sector on the particular subject of addressing structural barriers and social determinants of the spread of HIV and AIDS. The new iteration of the National Strategic Plan for HIV, TB, and STIs for the period 2023 to 2028 will build on the success of the previous NSP by way of maintaining the multi-sectoral, people-centered approach to eliminate HIV/AIDS, TB, STIs as public health threats by 2030. Honorable House Chair, land reform remains a key programmatic response to effecting restorative justice, and transforming the colonial and apartheid spatial planning. We will continue to fast-track the land reform agenda as it relates to the access and the beneficial use of land. The land reform program is also aimed at empowering beneficiaries, including rural communities. The success of our work depends on investing in a capable, ethical, and developmental state that has the capacity to redirect capital and resource towards development that has no tolerance for corruption. In realizing our commitment, we have embarked on a process to review career management of director generals, heads of department, with a view to place emphasis on outcomes. Secondly, we are moving with speed to institutionalize the professionalization of the public service, including having ethical leadership and meritocracy as a cornerstone of our administration. Honorable House Chair, as leader of government business in Parliament, I will continue to monitor and strengthen executive accountability to Parliament. And central to this responsibility is ensuring that ministers of the executive attend to their parliamentary responsibilities by appearing before portfolio committees and responding to questions for both oral and written reply within stipulated timeframes. Linked to our role in monitoring executive accountability is a development of a realistic legislative program with priority bills. In April of this year, we submitted the 2023 legislative program as approved by Cabinet for introduction to Parliament. Cabinet ministers have also been requested to identify priority bills in line with government priorities to be introduced before Parliament, to Parliament before the end of this administration. Through our continuous engagements with presiding officers of Parliament, we will continue to fast-track and monitor the processing of priority legislation that will improve the planning capacity of line departments to effectively deliver on our priorities. Honorable House Chair, one of the key priorities we are seized with is to promote social cohesion and nation building. In this regard, as government, we continue to conduct a series of engagements with various partners, including traditional leaders, traditional health practitioners, military veterans, faith-based organizations, labor, and the private sector. We have been engaging with the National House of Traditional and Khoisan leaders to tackle challenges such as the safety of traditional leaders in our country. We have also agreed to work with traditional leaders focused on the following, amongst others: uniformity and standardization in terms of treatment of traditional leaders, speedy finalization of the handbook for traditional and Khoisan leaders, particularly to ensure that we can regulate the provision of the tools of trade for traditional and Khoisan leaders, improve the remuneration of traditional and Khoisan leaders, construction of chambers for provincial houses that do not have those. The state is also to release back land to the custody of traditional leaders and their communities. And lastly, to review the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act. We will, House Chair, continue to engage and report to the House on the work of the Interministerial Task Team to further strengthen our partnership and address matters of concern to the institution of traditional leadership. Honorable House Chair, at this stage, we must acknowledge the role played by all social partners and individuals at different levels in responding to various societal challenges that confront us as a country, including disaster relief and community upliftment efforts. We have no country other than the Republic of South Africa. In our diversity, which in itself is our strength, we must continue to work towards a common goal of a non-racist, non-sexist, and prosperous nation. Our continent required peace, growth, and prosperity. It is for this reason that we will accelerate peace efforts in South Sudan, the Great Lakes, Central Africa, the Horn of Africa, and the rest of the continent. House Chair, the socio-economic opportunities of our continent will be realized through the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Equally, we will continue to advocate for a world and a global community based on the principles that all people are created equal and deserve equal opportunities, an instrument to realize their full potential. We will continue to advocate for resolution of all conflicts through peaceful means, including in Russia and Ukraine conflict. Honorable House Chair, we are addressing all these factors that impede implementation, including at local and departmental government capacity. We are dealing with problems of red tape, governance, poor contract management, long-term or long turnaround times to implement decisions, and also corruption. We are equally monitoring underspending, fiscal dumping, and the quality of expenditure. Implement decisions around insourcing, especially on maintenance, standardization, the decision on manufacturing, for instance, of paving bricks for roads and other options. Honorable House Chair, as I conclude, we are going to strengthen good governance by building up capacities for implementation, ensuring ethical processes, and addressing the challenges of construction, mafias, criminality, and corruptions which lead to under-delivery. House Chair, we are not looking back. We are steaming ahead to build a better life for all our people. House Chair, as I conclude, I want to once again thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this debate. Honorable President Makwala. Makwala. Hey, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy President. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, I now will call upon the Honorable Prince M.G. Buthelezi. I've been informed that the Honorable Buthelezi will address us on the virtual platform. The Honorable Buthelezi.
Ministers, honorable deputy ministers, honorable members. Every year, in the absence of detail of this budget, very little is said about the budget itself. Instead, this debate becomes a platform to denounce the president and his party for every failure excess and scandal that has destroyed the credibility of the ruling party and decimated public interest. I've tried over the years to speak to this actual budget, pointing out the absence of information on the presidency's audited performance history, the massive chunk consumed by salaries just to maintain this bloated machinery, the skyrocketing expenditure on travel and consultants, the duplication of reporting lines and the overlapping of roles. I've done this because that's our duty as representatives of the people. We are now faced with the biggest presidency of our country has ever seen. Unlike other departments over which the parliament is actually able to exercise oversight, the presidency has 4 ministers, 4 deputy ministers, a deputy president, and a president himself. And yet this burgeoning presidency has not translated into solutions. The problem persists and they are growing. We therefore thank the IFE's Chief Minister, the Honorable Mr. Naren Singh, for his intensive efforts in the Rules Committee. We have finally seen the acceptance that Parliament should strengthen its oversight over the presidency. It is the first step on a road we should have walked many years ago, and there may still be a long journey ahead. But hopefully, in the end, we will see a time when this budget goes through the same process that every budget is subjected to, where the accounting officer answers all questions in committee before we are asked to declare in this House that this budget is justified. When that happens, the IFE will revert to speaking to the budget in this debate. For now, we must consider the perspective of ordinary South Africans who, like us, have not had the opportunity to ask questions and answers. For our people, House Chair, the figures that cause the greatest anxiety are not the figures in this budget, but the figures that translate into immediate crisis for households, for families, and across the country. Figures like inflation, like the cost of electricity, like the cost of food, the cost of transport, of healthcare and education, the cost of doing business, and the terrible cost of pervasive corruption. We all shook our heads in disbelief when the former president insisted that there was a good story to tell. The fact of crisis on every country was blatantly obvious. It was a welcome relief when his successor spoke so candidly of the problems that we're facing. But we needed more than an admission of crisis. South Africa needs solutions. Without solutions, our economy continues to plummet. The rand has depreciated more in 5 years of this presidency than it did during the so-called 9 wasted years. Since the ANC took power, South Africa's currency has become 5 times weaker, and sadly, the decline is accelerating. In 5 years of this presidency, unemployment has increased by 6%. We have almost 2 million people unemployed in South Africa, more than did at the start of the presidency. Youth unemployment has increased by over 8%. While other emerging markets have managed to reduce inequality, South Africa has now had the highest level of inequality in the world. The gap between rich and poor is a chasm. As one activist pointed out, in South Africa, the chief executive officer earns as much as 461 black women. More than half of our people live in poverty. It's cheaper to buy petrol in any of the BRICS partner countries than it is here. In fact, petrol costs half the price in Russia than it does here in South Africa. In the 5 years of this presidency, murder has increased, rape has increased, assault, robbery, hijacking, burglary, theft, illegal possession of firearms, all have increased. Kidnapping has increased by more than 58%. These are just figures, Honorable Your Excellency, and they speak for themselves. February saw us hit 100 consecutive days of load shedding. Yet for 2 months, the President's new Minister of Electricity has not defined responsibility. While the GDP flounders at 0.2%. Expenditure in the presidency is set to increase by 2.9% each year. And that figure speaks of a leadership grossly out of touch with reality. In concluding, sir, I would like to thank you, President, for what you have done in tackling corruption in our country. I would like to say to you, as the oldest member of this parliament, that I'm always mindful of the fact that your leadership is not responsible for every misfortune that the country faces. I will end up by saying, Your Excellency, to you, someone defined a saint as a sinner who dies trying. I think that there are many positive things for which you and your ministers are trying to do. Please, in spite of what the negative things that are pointed out, continue to do the good things that you are doing for the country. So, in other words, my final message, Your Excellency, that please continue to lead in the mold of that definition of a saint who dies trying. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Groenewald.
Geachte Voorzitter, through you to the Honourable President, 62 years from today, actually exactly this day ago, South Africa became the Republic of South Africa on the 31st of May, 1961. On that day, South Africa got rid of British rule and of colonialism in South Africa. The preamble of our Constitution says quite clearly, let's honor those who built South Africa. So let's honor those people who had the wisdom to get rid of British colonialism and British rule. Honourable President, you referred to the crime situation in South Africa. Yesterday we received the latest crime statistics for the last quarter of the previous financial year. And the statistics is quite clear. It was the third consecutive quarter where violent crime in South Africa increased. If you look annually, total crime overall increased 7.24%. Contact crimes increased 8.5%. Murder increased 9.6%. We have 76 murders every day. When it comes to women and children, the murder on women increased to a staggering 20.25%. Now, Honourable President, if you look at the statistics and you look at jungle justice, 2,324 people were murdered by means of communities and jungle justice. That is proof that the community and the people of South Africa don't have trust in the police. They have to take the law in their own hands to protect them. But, Honourable President, I want to appeal to you today that you appointed the National Commissioner of Police, General Masimola, on the 31st of March last year. As we speak, he still didn't receive a top secret clearance from the State Security Agency. That is unacceptable. In fact, that means if he looks at top secret documents, that he is contravening the law. Now, I can't understand why it takes so long to get a clearance. I appeal to you. If you want to strengthen his hand to fight crime effectively, ensure that they do the right thing. Honourable President, I want to come to water. En ek wil vir die agbare president sê, wat ek hoor van u is dat u die benadering het wat u van Eskom het ook met die waterkrisis in Suid-Afrika. Dis 'n fout. U skud u kop. Wat ek wil vandag vir u sê, mense kan sonder elektrisiteit klaarkom. Ek het groot geword sonder elektrisiteit.
maar mense sterf as hulle nie water het nie of as water besoedel is. En daarom wil ek vir u vra, u moet dit as 'n dringende krisis hanteer, nie soos in die geval van Eskom nie. Honorable Chair, President, after the COVID-19, I promised you that the Freedom Front will come forward with an economic recovery plan. I have it with me today. I'm going to hand it over to you. Because, Honorable President, under your presidency, firstly, we see that the value of the rand weakened 40%. Unemployment increased 7%. We got grey-listed. What is also quite disturbing is that 10-year-olds can actually not read with meaning as we look at the system of our education. The core of this proposal is a free market system. It was compiled by independent economists like Professor Jannie Rousseau and Mike Holland. They have no links with the Freedom Front Plus. In fact, we had to pay for it. But it is in line with the policies of the Freedom Front Plus. And therefore, again, I urge, and it is also in this report, get rid of black economic empowerment and affirmative action. Some of the proposals here is that you replace black economic empowerment with BEST, Black Economic Skills Transfer. Let's give skills to people to have a good business so that they can create jobs. Agbare president, ek wil ook vir u sê dat die ANC en u sê u gaan nou werwing doen onder minderheidsgroepe. Wites, bruines en Indiërs vir volgende jaar se verkiesing. Maar u, die ANC, het 'n nuwe apartheid geskep in Suid-Afrika. 'n Nuwe apartheid wat gebaseer is op ras. Want as u gaan kyk na die nuwe quotas wat gestel word, dan wil ek vir u sê dis niks anders as apartheid nie. It took 33 years to get rid of apartheid till 1994. It took the ANC 29 years to get apartheid back. Al wat ek vir u sê as dit gaan oor regstellende aksie, en ek verwys hier na the song Sinzeni Na. It was one of the freedom songs. En al wat Sinzeni Na sê, wat het ons gedoen? Wat het ons gedoen? Ons enigste sonde is die kleur van ons vel. Stop die nuwe apartheid. Ek dank u.
Thank you, honorable member. Order, honorable members. Order. Honorable Groenewald. Honorable Groenewald. Order, honorable members. Order. Yeah, honorable members, don't cross the floor. The next speaker is the Honorable Minister in the Presidency, responsible for planning, monitoring and evaluation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the House, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Menos Viwe Mapisanga Kulambokoto, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa Vosingo Mrangapanda, Honorable Deputy President of the country and of the ruling party, Ndate Paul Mashatile, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, and all other honorable members of Parliament, including the honorable members on the other side, most especially Honorable Shivambo. I would have said that it is an honor for me to come here in this August House. That's what I planned to say. However, I'm really disappointed, Honorable Speaker, to have listened to the leader of the official opposition. I had expected that at least they would just have some inhuman sense, or a human sense, not be inhuman, to not even acknowledge the negligence that has happened in Tshwane municipality. You would have expected that at least a little bit would have said about what happened in Hammanskraal. That just shows you what kind of a political party is DA, and I'm truly disappointed. However, having said that, let me take this opportunity to actually congratulate the Minister of Electricity, Minister Ramaphosa, for having done so well and attracted the
Honorable
invitation-
Minister, I just want to find out why the honorable member want to be recognized.
Our chairperson, I just want confirmation whether this is the minister's.
No, honorable member, please take your seat. Take your seat.
It's a maiden speech.
Take your seat, please.
Thank you very
Honorable members,
much.
order. Honorable members, don't rise on spurious points of order. It's not very clever to do that.
Thank you
Please
very
continue, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. As I was saying, I would like to congratulate, of course, the good work that has been done by Minister Ramaphosa, and it is for this reason, I guess, that kubuhlungu for EFF to realize that indeed countries like Mozambique see it fit to continue to strengthen our cooperation that has started in 1994 by inviting Minister Ramaphosa to go to Mozambique to discuss the issues that has to do with electricity and further strengthening our cooperation that we have had since 1994, and we have also had them since the time that we were still fighting for the liberation that we have today. Madam Speaker, the presidency remains at the apex of our government in South Africa, and it remains an important institution in the building of a capable and developmental state. In the words of an English playwright, John Haywood, and I open quotes, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour, close quotes. The rise of the Roman state remains one of history's most defining periods in building of governance institutions. The rise to power occurred on the backdrop of a period of unrest and instability, similar to what South Africa and the world are experiencing today. The key lessons on the establishment of the Roman state lie in resilient and adaptable political institutions that facilitated a combination of military power, political agility, and an economic evolution. Likewise, the exponential rise of China as the world's largest economy is facilitated through the state and its political leadership, which focuses on economic expansion through the investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Both these cases of Rome and China teaches us that a strong, capable developmental state lies at the center of political, economic, and social development impact. As we approach the end of this administration and prepare to commemorate 30 years of our country's democratic dispensation, we too find ourselves in the position of taking urgent, critical, and decisive action to build a developmental state. The start of the sixth administration was guided by a clear plan informed by the President's first State of the Nation address, also known as SONA, in 2019, the imperatives of the National Development Plan, the Sustainable Development Goals, the African Union's Agenda 2063, and definitely the resolutions, of course, of the ruling party's 54th National Conference. This prescript informed the development of the current medium-term strategic framework as the 5-year blueprint of government. We have a plan. We are implementing the plan currently, and we will continue to reprioritize our plans where necessary. Honorable Chair, the NDP cautions us all on the detrimental impact of capacity inequality as one of the main challenges in building a capable and developmental state. To build a capable and developmental state, we must build a strong political institution that are coordinated across the arms of the state to ensure the maximum performance and impact of government's intervention, especially in areas of service delivery and performance of state-owned enterprises. Honorable members, the President have already alluded to this. In line with his commitment to hold the executive accountable, we as DPME have facilitated and supported the President and Deputy President in assessment of ministers, in review of their key priorities, to make sure that at least when the end of this MTSF come to being, we should then now be able to register a lot of progress as it relates to service delivery. We will continue as DPME, of course, to monitor and evaluate the implementation of all these priorities that the President and the Deputy President has agreed with ministers, and we will definitely report in due time at the end of this cycle. Over the medium term, the government has dedicated 59.2% of the consolidated non-interest spending to health, education and housing, social protection, transport, employment and local amenities. In this regard, in March, 8.3 million people benefited from the social relief of distress, which is also known as SRD grant. Extensive research by the Department of Social Development shows that 93% of beneficiaries use the grant to buy staple food. In addition to that, further studies by the University of Cape Town indicate that the grant is an enabler in people seeking employment. According to studies done also in this field by a French development agency, they are saying that SRD grant contributes to local economies and development by stimulating customer demand and establishes and stabilizes smaller businesses and informal trader businesses. In this regard, we are actually thanking the government of the ANC for introducing the SRD, because it doesn't only deal with poverty, but it also deals with the issues of growing small businesses and making sure that circulation of money in different areas does take place. In terms of developing longer-term intervention to the SRD grant, complementary interventions to address poverty are being developed by the Presidency, Department of Social Development, SASSA, and other stakeholders, including design, option, and funding mechanisms. This work will be completed in July 2023 in time for the medium-term expenditure committee processes. The National Health Insurance Bill remains an important component to ensuring universal quality healthcare for our citizens, as the President has already alluded to. The NHI bill has undergone public hearings and received its clarification or classification as a desirable bill by the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Health and is receiving attention, of course, by this National Assembly. In this regard, we know that our overall healthcare system has seen marginal improvements in the country's health outcomes. This includes the improvement in the total life expectancy at birth, which reflects the sum total of all work done by government, social partners, and society at large in improving the social determinants of health. The life expectancy has steadily improved over the past 3 years, between 64.38 years in 2021 to 64.88 years in 2023. It's a marginal increase, but we celebrate that because it is an improvement. We have made great strides in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, led by the President Ramaphosa, of course. We must continue to invest and maintain mechanisms in pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. In relation to visible policing, the President has already alluded to the fact that we are celebrating today the fact that SAPS have new recruits that are amounting to more than 10,000. I think it is about 10,358, and the target, of course, was 10,000. These new recruits improve capacity in key specialized areas, including inter alia, the detective services, crime intelligence, and public order policing. The plans to recruit, as the President have already said, new police personnel per year for the next 2 financial years will definitely increase capacity of SAPS. In addition, we welcome the additional funding allocation to increase patrolling vehicles, electronic gadgets, and reflective clothing to support community policing forum in all our provinces, because government cannot do it alone. It is for this reason that civilian policing becomes important. The increase in police visibility and capacity is key in responding and preventing crime in our country. We aim to work together with other stakeholders to capacitate crime prevention with government, law enforcement agencies, and communities. Honorable Chair, our higher education and training sector has seen significant improvement, including more young people having access to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, also known as NSFAS, which has improved access to institutions of higher learning, including TVET colleges and public universities. In this context, the number of students who have seen assistance by NSFAS has risen from more than 740,000 in 100,000 in 2019 and now it is gone to 800,000 in 2022. The scheme is making further reforms to ensure it covers the growing missing middle in an effective and sustainable way moving forward. We are pleased with the increase in learners from disadvantaged communities passing at bachelor level passes, which is an improvement from when it used to only be seen in schools that are of paying nature. In 2023, learners from low-income communities contributed to 60% of the overall bachelor passes, and that is a very good achievement. Honorable members, the state of our municipalities requires agent intervention, with 163 of 257 municipalities classified as being in financial distress. And I do believe that the Minister of COGTA will definitely give more detail in that. The processing of the Intergovernmental Monitoring Support and Intervention Bill by Parliament to address the increasing number of distressed municipalities is very key. It provides a coherent framework to strengthen coordination and collaboration with sector departments in supporting the Department of COGTA, National Treasury, and provincial treasuries in the development and monitoring of financial recovery and turnaround strategies for municipalities in distress or under administration in terms of 139 of or Section 139 of the Constitution. Accordingly, sustained and practical support is required from the Municipal Debt Relief Program to ensure municipal debt is addressed. The growing instability of coalition government can be managed through a policy framework, that's what we believe, that advocates for a more hands-on approach by provincial government with regards to unstable municipalities. This is key to addressing challenges that exist on a political and administrative interface that threatens the stability of our municipalities. In conclusion, Madam Speaker and the chairperson of the session, the National Planning Commission continues to be an anchor for the coordination of a stronger planning system that will ensure the realization of the Vision 2030 for the South Africa we all want to live in, as enshrined in the National Development Plan. One of the major work streams that guide the coordination is the enhancing of an enabling environment for the participation of civil society and business in a capable state. In my capacity as the chairperson of the National Planning Commission and a government representative in the Public-Private Growth Initiative, I am taking this opportunity to making a clarion call to private sector to make sustainable contribution in accelerating economic and social development. Economic growth and development requires coordinated approaches by all sectors of society to ensure that basic needs of our people are met. Funding the development of public goods, including infrastructure, provision of services, and expansion of social protection system is expensive and time-consuming and definitely technical. And as I said before, government cannot do it alone. We need to partner with everyone who has got a will to actually see South Africa being a better South Africa, to play a role and come and partner with us. We therefore would like to build sustainable partnership with the private sector to ensure that our developmental goals are achieved. We each bring unique contributions, including the private sector's capital, of course, and definitely us as the public sector to oversee the implementation of economic and social policy to guide development. A strengthened relationship between private sector and public sector is beyond transactions. It must encompass the active citizenry by all sectors to increase the effectiveness and responsiveness of service delivery for the greater good of our public. I close in the words of a businessman and former president of the Republic of Chile, President Sebastián Pinera, and I open quote. We have got to move beyond the idea that the public and private sector are at odds. Government has to lay the groundwork for private equity to productively invest in things like education. It's a partnership and definitely not a battle. I take this moment to thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and I am hoping that definitely the things that we will be discussing here today and this debate will yield the fruits that we have planned that they should, and definitely we are going to work together to ensure that we support the President, to ensure that we build a capable government, and definitely to ensure that we serve our people with service delivery that is clean, with no corruption, and definitely with the might that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Reverend Kayar J. Meshu.
Chair of Chairs, Honourable President, your Deputy President, and members, I'm sure many of us have heard rumors that there is soon going to be an uprising in our country because many people are angered by government's failure to deliver services, particularly at local level. People are tired of load shedding that costs them jobs. Appliances are breaking all the time, and food continues to perish in fridges because of constant and unending power failures. Worst of all, people who depend on life support and electricity continue to lose their lives. Almost every day, we hear of people whose deaths can be linked to load shedding. These people have heard promises that have never been fulfilled year in and year out. They are tired, and they now want action. They want solutions, and they want government to prove that they care and are willing to work for them. A question we all want answers from the President is, when is load shedding going to be brought to an end? Conflicting messages are coming from the executive. Some say it will end within the next 2 years, while those who don't want to commit themselves are saying load shedding is going to be with us for the next few years. Mr. President, when is load shedding going to end is the question. Why should South Africans continue supplying electricity to countries that never have load shedding, yet South Africa that supplies them with electricity continues to be plagued by daily power cuts? South Africans are suffering because of many other issues that include lack of access to clean water, high unemployment, poverty, the rising cost of living, crime, and corruption. Yesterday, we received the latest crime statistics that indicate that the police are losing the fight against crime in this country. The 2022/2023 fourth quarter crime statistics show an overall increase of 3.7% in crime compared to the fourth quarter of the previous financial year. Most categories of conduct crimes have increased over this period. Murder of women and children continue to increase on a daily basis. According to SAPS, most murders, attempted murders, and assaults GBH are caused by arguments and misunderstandings. They have concluded that these statistics clearly show that South Africans struggle with peaceful conflict resolution. Does this mean that South Africans are becoming more and more intolerant of different opinions, that their only way of dealing with their differences and misunderstandings is through violence? This is very sad indeed and must be dealt with soon. We have to start engaging each other and debating issues while acknowledging that because we are different, we will have different opinions. One of the discussions and debates that I wish South Africans should start engaging in is the challenge of food security that we are told is facing the world. We need to start talking to each other before people start fighting for food. We need to support our farmers. Mr. President, there are people who are
Honourable
taking
Member,
land in
your
other
time is
countries.
now
South
expired.
Africans need land. Farmers need land. Thank you.
Thank you. All honourable members, I now invite to the podium the Honourable Minister in the Presidency for Electricity. Order, order. The Honourable Minister is delivering his maiden speech.
Oh, yes. Okay, look at that. Okay. No, I am nothing.
Order, honourable members. Order.
No, thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, President of the Republic, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, members of Parliament, fellow South Africans. House Chair, it is under trying circumstances that we address this People's Parliament. Yet, despite the immense challenges we have faced recently, we remain emboldened by the leadership of President Ramaphosa and the common goodwill of corporate South Africa and ordinary South Africans in our spirit and resolve to get our country back on her feet. South Africa is undoubtedly at the throes of a profound existential crisis which, if left unattended, will continue to send alarming shockwaves through our economy and further displace the most vulnerable members of our society. Historical and contemporary political science teaches us that a good crisis should never be left to go to waste, because times of inherent national strife present unique opportunities for radical change and overtures to cultivate new paradigms of innovation and adaptation. House Chair, despite our unjust and inhumane history, the people of South Africa have always demonstrated an innate ability to triumph against any material impediment or common vice confronting them. This energy crisis demands no less. When confronted by apartheid, our people led the longest human rights campaign, which ultimately led to the dismantling of the federal system in 1994. More recently, our people demonstrated immense resilience when they undertook seismic behavioral changes and adaptations to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, to mention a few. Winston Churchill laments in his 1940 address to the House of Commons about the war. He says the following, I quote, "Let me say that I'm not advocating for controversy. On the contrary, I say, let pre-war feuds die. Let personal quarrels be forgotten, and let us keep our hatred for the common enemy. Let party interest be ignored. Let all our energies be harnessed. Let the whole ability and forces of the nation be held into the struggle, and let all the strong horses be pulled by the collar." House Chair, a little under 3 months since the President's announcement of the creation of the Ministry in the Presidency for Electricity, we have, borrowing from Churchill's words, harnessed all energies, pun intended, and sought the absolute whole ability and forces of the nation in a common struggle to reclaim every megawatt, for every megawatt does count. I must say, House Speaker, that we have consulted the wide spectrum of stakeholders behind our efforts to reduce the intensity and regularity of load shedding, including the unions, industrial and energy-intensive users, automotive original equipment manufacturers, industry bodies, the Retail Industry Association, organized property owners and developers, original equipment manufacturers in the power generation sector, the provincial governments, and also the diplomatic community and the Multilateral Development Bank. Without exception, these stakeholders have pledged their support to our strategic interventions to reduce the intensity and frequency of load shedding. The winter outlook indicates an increased risk of supply shortfall against expected demands. Our worst case scenario indicating that load shedding could intensify to higher stages if our interventions are unsuccessful. I should hasten to stress that an increase in load shedding levels does not mean a greater risk on a national blackout. Instead, load shedding is a tool to prevent such an occurrence by managing the demand for electricity at any given time. A national blackout or grid collapse remains a highly improbable, as multitude safeguards are in place to ensure that it does not occur. House Speaker, let me address you on the concrete interventions in addition to what the President had elucidated earlier on in his address. It seeks also to address in part what the question raised by Reverend Mishwe on what exactly is the plan, and I want to share that with you in the most granular terms. Let me also just caution that the resolution of electricity is a complex space. The provision of electricity presents the intersection of the multiple disciplines of engineering. Civil engineers are responsible for the construction of the superstructure, the cooling towers, and all the units that house these machines, including the chimneys. Mechanical engineers are responsible for the moving parts, such as turbines and also conveyor belts. Electrical engineers are responsible for the evacuation of the electrons, including transmission, distribution, infrastructure, and also the chemical engineers are responsible for addressing issues such as the chemical process in the flue gas desulfurization so that we reduce the emission levels. And also the control and instrumentation engineers, they responsible for the measurements and monitoring of all the moving parts. Why is this important? Is because some members in the House rely on Google search. I want to say to the Deputy President of the EFF, this is a complex space. It doesn't require a social scientist. It's engineers who are meant to resolve this question. So Google search is not sufficient. And let me say, what are we doing about the winter outlook? Our aggregation is that we should be able to realize about 4,800 megawatts. 6 interventions are going to be initiated. The first one is a continuous improvement of the energy availability factor. We project, Madam House Chair, that we should be able to improve the EAF in this period of the next 90 days by 3 percentage points. Just to put it into context, 1 percentage point increase amounts to an increase of 500 megawatts. So in essence, we are projecting that we should get about 1,500 additional megawatts as a result of the improvements in the energy availability factor. How are you going to achieve this? The first one is to embed what we call the resident engineers, people with experience, capacity, and expertise at the stations that are notorious for underperformance. The second one is the improvement of coal quality, including the tracking of good quality coal with the right calorific value to help to facilitate the burning rate and the efficiency of these units. The strategic path planning to ensure that we address the issues of outage slips, including direct procurement from the original equipment manufacturers, and the fixing of the cooling towers. The second intervention is about the exploitation of the peaking plants. And in this instance, we project that if we run them on load 21% of the time, we should be able to achieve the extraction of about that 2,000 megawatts. The third intervention is around additional generation capacity. We are contracting about 400 megawatts of additional capacity through the standard offer program, and this has been concluded, which will be online in the coming days. And this includes the extra capacity that will be coming from Calvin Power Station and large-scale industrial producers. This should give us, like I said, an additional 400 megawatts. We are procuring indeed from Mozambique in the immediate term, additional 80 megawatts from the Nakala Power ship in Mozambique through a power purchase agreement. And just to a message to the Deputy President of the EFF, we have done the same. We have visited accompanying the President to the Lesotho for ability for us to be able to get an additional 1,500 megawatts of additional capacity from hydropower projects, 4 of them that have been identified. We are also working with Namibia on the potential of green hydrogen going into the future. So there's no obsession about Mozambique, but it really is about a regional approach to ensure that the region has got sovereign energy sovereignty. City Power has identified a generator that can give us 100 megawatts in the short term. We are working with them to exploit that generating ability. We are also working with the Nelson Mandela Bay to get 44 megawatts of additional power in the turbine that has been decommissioned in 2010. So the aggregate of these interventions in the short term, the 90 days from today until August, is about 4,200 megawatts. On the demand side, we are working to ensure that we install devices to reduce consumption from households. Households consume anything up to 16% of installed capacity, and 35% of that is during peak. 30 to 50% of that 35 peak capacity is from geysers. Our projection is that we should be able to claw back 3,200 megawatts. Madam Speaker, I must say that the ministry will be issuing a request for information before the end of July 2023 for technology and funding partners to roll out the demand-side management intervention. In this regard, I really want to express our gratitude to the Chinese people through their ambassador here in China, working with us to ensure that we are able to get both the equipment and the expertise that was required for us to do demand-side management. The fifth intervention is around the ability for microgrid islands, especially for hospitals and critical infrastructure. Quite apart from the legal process and the issues around the appeal, the state still can abrogate its responsibility to ensure that there's an uninterrupted supply of quality electricity to hospitals and critical and strategic installations. In this regard, the Department of Health has identified 213 hospitals from exclusion from load shedding. As I speak to you, 76 of these are excluded with further work to exclude another 46. We have done modeling. We think that we have the capability to address the 137 that are remaining. What are we doing about those? Through our modeling and through a set of interventions on renewable energy sources, which includes PV, batteries, inverters, battery storage, and inverters. For small hospitals, if you aggregate them, you'll need about 10.1 billion rands of investments. Juxtapose this with the diesel cost for small hospitals, you need to spend about 89 million rands to buy generators, and a further 3.3 billion rands in operating costs for purposes of running these generators. So your return on investment is quite attractive, and that's why we are working on this modeling. What are we doing in this regard? We'll be going out for request for proposal before the end of July 2023 and outline a fast-track procurement process to secure the IPP for microgrid in the country. We're also working as a last intervention on the wheeling arrangement. We can get an additional 1,500 megawatts by introducing a wheeling framework that will enable the producers to use the infrastructure of ESCOM and municipalities to transport the electrons to those who have signed the power purchase agreements. Working with the South African Property Owners Associations, we have done a modeling. Over there, we can claw back about 9.5 gigawatts of additional generating capacity using the 100 million square meters of rooftop space. So we're working with SAPOA to ensure that we exploit this opportunity. What are we going to do between September and February of 2024? The President made mention that the 3 units in Kusile are coming back. Each unit is giving us 800 megawatts. So from those 3 units, we are going to get 3,200 megawatts. Unit 5 is coming back in Kusile in October of this year, is an additional 800 megawatts. So in total from Kusile, by December of this year, we are going to get 3,200 megawatts, which is essentially 3 stages of load shedding. We are, as the ministry now, going to commence with an emergency procurement program this on Powership Solutions to give us an additional 2,000 megawatts, and this amounts to 2 stages of load shedding. We are going to exploit the opportunities with regards to rooftop solutions and working on our modeling. We need about 2,000 houses, 200,000 houses to give us a 1,000 megawatts of additional capacity. We'll be rolling this one out, and we are confident of reducing load shedding by an additional 1 stage of load shedding. And then in the long term, what are we doing? We are working with Mozambique. They'll give us 420 megawatts from the Temane gas power facility. They are going to give us an additional 2,000 megawatts of gas to power, which is potentially available in 2026, and we'll also get an additional 1,000 megawatts over a period of 5 years. And the aggregate of this is that in the long term, to secure energy sovereignty, we should be in a position to get an additional 19,000 megawatts. House Speaker, I must say that besides the technical interventions, the government continues to support the most vulnerable against the impact and support business, industry, protecting jobs and our economic prospects. We are also conscious of our obligations to use the interventions proposed to drive localization and also job creation. We are working with the Government Employee Pension Fund to create a facility that will make it possible for poorer, less affluent households to access financing facilities to be able to roll out rooftop solar so that we are able to democratize the solution of energy in the country. As I conclude, I must indicate that we are doing everything possible to fight crime and corruption. A total of 1,952 ESCOM-related cases were reported to the SAPS between the period of 1st April 2022 and 29 May 2023. As I speak to you, 1,405 cases are still under investigation and 126 arrests have been made in this regard. In conclusion, I want to say the following, that in the midst of the current energy challenges we face, it is easy to become numb to the massive gains that the democratic government has made in ensuring universal access to energy, and that this gets to meet our sustainable development goals. As I speak to you, the amount of penetration in the country, energy penetration, is sitting at 89.3% as of 2021. House Speaker, it is often said that we don't even know how strong we are until we are forced to bring that hidden strength forward. Our strength as a people is not tested during the best of time. In these times of necessity, people do amazing things and expose the human capacity for survival and renewal. Our nation, in so many ways, stands at a challenging crossroads, yet our people, despite the immense hardships, continue to demonstrate resilience that is marked of Madiba's rainbow nation. We dare not take their patience and courage for granted. We dare not fail our people. Let us indeed make every megawatt count. Thanks, House Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Honourable Members. Thank you, Honourable Members. You may be seated. Order, Honourable Members. Order. Order, Honourable Members. Please take your seats. Honourable Members, business will now be suspended for 15 minutes for a comfort break. Bells will be rung for order. Order, Honourable Members. But bells will be rung 5 minutes before the resumption of business. Business is now suspended.
It's not parliamentary for Uma Jaivana to address the House.